Michael was meticulously arranging his textbooks on the small shelf above his desk when the door to his room flew open with a startling bang. He spun around, clutching a mathematics textbook to his chest to face the intruder. It was his alien classmate, Cellari, with her shimmering blue skin and large, curious eyes that seemed to almost glow in the dim lighting of his dorm room. Hi, Michael stammered, unsure of how she had gotten into his room. Cellari blinked, her eyes adjusting to the indoor light, as a flush of violet spread across her cheeks, an indicator of embarrassment in her species. I am so sorry, Michael. I thought this was my room. The directions were confusing, she explained hurriedly, her voice carrying a melodic accent that Michael found intriguing. No problem, Cellari. It happens, Michael replied, placing his book down and offering a reassuring smile. But how did you? She pointed to a gadget in her hand, a sleek device with pulsing lights. I used my locator, but it must have malfunctioned. It directed me here instead of to my dorm on the 4th floor. Ah, I see. Well, you're here now. Would you like to come in for a moment while you sort it out? Michael gestured inside, where his laptop lay open among scattered notes. Cellari nodded, stepping inside cautiously. Thank you, Michael. I really appreciate it. As she entered, Michael noticed her looking around curiously. His room was a typical college dorm room. Small, with a single window, a bed, a desk, and personal items littering most surfaces. Is this how all human dorms look? Cellari asked, her gaze fixating on a poster of a famous rock band on the wall. Pretty much, though I guess everyone has their own style. Some are cleaner, others are, well, more lived in, Michael said, chuckling slightly. Cellari laughed, the sound light and bubbly. Thalassans prefer open spaces and minimal belongings. It's easier when you live underwater. That must be amazing. Living underwater, Michael mused, genuinely intrigued. It has its charm, Cellari admitted, but I'm here to learn about terrestrial life, among other things. Your university is very prestigious, you know? Michael felt a pang of pride. Yeah, it's one of the best for interspecies education. I'm studying xenobiology myself. What about you? Intergalactic diplomacy, Cellari responded. I hope to bridge gaps between species across the universe. That sounds impressive, Michael acknowledged. He then noticed Cellari fiddling with her locator again. Still not working? It's more confused than I am, Cellari sighed. She looked up at Michael, her eyes hopeful. Could you perhaps show me the way to the 4th floor? I'm afraid I'll end up in the cafeteria if I try it alone. Michael laughed, nodding. Sure, I could use a break from studying anyway. Let me just grab my keys. As they walked out of the room together, Michael found himself looking forward to the short journey to the 4th floor. Cellari seemed like someone worth getting to know. After all, how often did one get the chance to make friends with someone from another planet? As they headed down the hallway, their conversation flowed easily, bridging the gap between two very different lives with laughter and shared curiosity. The elevator dinged softly as it reached the 4th floor. Michael stepped out first, followed by Cellari, who still looked slightly bewildered by the layout of the human dormitory. This should be it, Michael said, gesturing to the corridor lined with doors identical to his own. Thank you, Michael. I might have wandered around for hours without your help, Cellari said with a grateful smile. No problem. Hey, are you free this evening? A couple of friends and I are planning a movie night. It's a good way to unwind. You should come, Michael suggested, hoping to make her feel more welcome. Cellari's eyes brightened. I would love to. What kind of movie? Sci-fi, actually. It might be interesting for you to see how humans imagine alien civilizations, Michael chuckled. That sounds fascinating. I've always wondered about that, Cellari admitted as they stopped in front of her dorm room. Later that evening, Michael knocked on Cellari's door with his roommate, Dave, a lanky fellow with an easy smile and a passion for old Earth cinema. Ready for movie night? Michael asked as Cellari opened the door. Absolutely, she replied, her voice tinged with excitement. They walked together to the common room where a small group had already gathered, spreading out on various couches and bean bags with bowls of popcorn and chips scattered around. Everyone, this is Cellari. Michael introduced her to the group. She's from Thalassa. The group greeted her warmly, with curious glances and friendly nods. Dave, ever the host, offered her a choice of snacks. Hope you find something you like here. Not sure what snacks are like under the sea, Dave joked, handing her a bowl of popcorn. Cellari smiled, taking a tentative taste before brightening up. It's quite good, actually. As the lights dimmed and the movie started, Cellari's reactions to the human portrayal of aliens were priceless. Her occasional comments and questions were met with laughter and shared looks of amusement among the group. Why do your aliens always look so menacing? Cellari whispered to Michael during a particularly tense scene. It's just a stereotype, I guess. Makes for a good story, Michael whispered back. I assure you, we're not all like that. Cellari responded with a mock stern expression, causing Michael to chuckle. Halfway through the movie, Dave leaned over, his interest piqued by Cellari's insights. Do thalassans have movies or something similar? We have memory sharing. It's like experiencing someone else's memories as vividly as they did, Cellari explained. That's incredible, Dave exclaimed. Way better than movies. The movie ended with a round of applause, and the discussion turned from cinematic aliens to real interstellar relations. Cellari, do thalassans really communicate telepathically? One of the students asked, a hint of skepticism in his voice. Not exactly, Cellari clarified. We use bioluminescent signals and low-frequency sounds. Telepathy is a myth, even among many species in the universe. As the night wound down, the group felt more like friends than strangers from different worlds. Michael watched Cellari animatedly chatting with Dave and the others, her initial shyness replaced by a confident charm. Walking back to her dorm, Cellari turned to Michael. Thank you for inviting me. Tonight was enlightening. Anytime, Cellari. It's great having you here, Michael replied, feeling a sense of camaraderie. Let's do this again. Definitely, Cellari agreed, her smile reflecting genuine joy. As Michael headed back to his room, he felt a surge of pride in how well Cellari was integrating into their little community. It was moments like these that made university life memorable, bridging cultures and creating friendships that could last a lifetime. The next morning, Michael was up early, pacing in his dorm room while contemplating his plan for the day. He had promised Cellari a more extensive tour of the campus and the city beyond, wanting to show her what life was really like beyond the confines of their university bubble. His phone buzzed with a message from Cellari. Ready for today's adventure? Grinning, he typed back, absolutely. Meet you in the lobby in 10? See you there. As they met up, Michael noticed Cellari seemed even more enthusiastic than usual, her eyes scanning everything around her keenly. So, what's the plan? She asked. I thought we'd start with a walk around the campus, then head downtown. There's a market that showcases food from all over the galaxy. Thought you might like it, Michael explained. That sounds amazing, Cellari replied, her voice filled with excitement. Their first stop was the university's main library, an architectural marvel with spiraling towers and glass domes. Inside, Michael introduced Cellari to Jack, one of his classmates who worked part-time in the library. Jack, a tall, bespectacled guy with a quiet demeanor, shook hands with Cellari. Heard a lot about you. Looking for anything specific? Just exploring for now, Cellari answered, her gaze wandering over the stacks of books and data pads. Jack smiled. Let me show you something. He led them to a section of the library dedicated to interstellar studies, books, and artifacts from different planets. Thought this might be right up your alley. Cellari's face lit up as she delicately picked up a data pad containing historical accounts of first contacts between various species. This is fascinating, thank you, Jack. As they continued their tour, Michael and Cellari talked about everything from Earth's history to Thalassan culture. The discussion was so engrossing that they barely noticed the time passing. Leaving the library, they made their way downtown, the streets bustling with a mix of humans and aliens. They reached the market, a vibrant hub filled with stalls selling exotic fruits, spices, and handmade goods. Let's try some street food, Michael suggested. They approached a stall selling a popular Earth delicacy, much to Cellari's curiosity. What's this? She asked, pointing to a dish. It's called tacos. You should give it a try, Michael encouraged, ordering two. They sat on a nearby bench, watching people pass by as they ate. Cellari took a tentative bite, her face expressing surprise and delight. "This is delicious." "Told you," Michael laughed. "Earth food isn't too bad, huh?" "Not at all. It's different, but I like it." They spent the rest of the afternoon wandering through the market, Cellari trying different Earth foods while Michael enjoyed seeing her reactions. As the sun began to set, they decided to grab coffee at a small cafe nearby. Sitting across from each other, their conversation deepened. Michael shared stories about his family and what motivated him to study xenobiology. Cellari listened intently, then shared her own dreams of fostering understanding between species. "It's important," she said earnestly. "Understanding each other's cultures and histories can only bring us closer." Michael nodded, feeling a connection that went beyond their friendship. "I agree. And it's days like today that really help bridge those gaps." As they walked back to campus under the twilight sky, both felt a sense of fulfillment. It wasn't just about exploring the city or trying new foods. It was about understanding and appreciating their differences and finding common ground in their shared experiences. "Thanks for today, Michael. It was more than just fun. It was enlightening," Cellari said as they reached her dorm. "Anytime, Cellari. I'm glad we could spend the day together," Michael replied, already looking forward to their next adventure. They parted ways with a promise to plan another day out soon, both feeling that their bond had deepened significantly, not just as classmates, but as friends exploring a vast and diverse universe together. The following week, Cellari approached Michael with an excited gleam in her eyes. "Michael, I've got an idea. How about I show you something from Thalassa? A real cultural exchange." "Sounds great," Michael responded, his curiosity piqued. "What do you have in mind?" "I can access a virtual reality program from my planet. It's a simulation of the Thalassan Festival of Lights. It's one of our most beautiful events," Cellari explained. "That sounds amazing. When can we do this?" Michael's enthusiasm matched Cellari's, eager to learn more about her world. "How about this Friday? We can use the VR lab at the university," she suggested. "Let's do it." Friday came quickly. Michael and Cellari met at the VR lab, a state-of-the-art facility equipped with the latest technology. They were joined by Dave and another friend, Tom, who was studying virtual reality programming and was curious about the Thalassan application. As they geared up, Cellari briefed them. "The Festival of Lights celebrates the longest day on Thalassa. It's full of music, dance, and of course, lights. I hope the translation to VR does it justice." Tom, always the techie, adjusted the settings on the VR equipment. "This is pretty advanced stuff. Thalassan tech seems way ahead of ours." Cellari smiled. "We've had a bit more time to perfect it." Once everything was set up, the four of them donned their VR headsets. The lab around them melted away, replaced by the vibrant underwater world of Thalassa. The water was clear and filled with floating lights, bioluminescent creatures darting around, creating a spectacle of natural luminescence. "Wow, this is incredible," Michael exclaimed, virtually moving through the water with a swiftness that felt exhilarating. Cellari guided them through the simulation, showing them landmarks and explaining their significance. They watched as virtual Thalassans, rendered in stunning detail, performed traditional dances. "This dance is a storytelling method in our culture," Cellari narrated as they observed a group of dancers. "Each movement tells a part of our history." Dave, who was fascinated by non-human cultures, watched in awe. "It's like nothing I've ever seen. You guys have such a rich culture." They spent the next hour exploring various aspects of the festival, from art installations to simulated rides on Thalassan sea creatures. Michael found himself completely drawn into the world, a stark contrast to the dry, academic studies of alien cultures he was used to. As the program ended, they reluctantly removed their VR headsets, finding themselves back in the dimly lit lab. "That was an incredible experience, Cellari. Thank you for sharing that with us," Michael said, still feeling the thrill of the virtual ocean. "It was my pleasure," Cellari replied, her eyes shining with pride. "I'm glad you all enjoyed it." Tom, ever curious, turned to Cellari. "How accurate is the simulation to the real thing?" Cellari thought for a moment. "It's very close, but the real thing has a feeling, an ambience that's hard to capture. Maybe one day, you could see it in person." "That would be a dream," Michael mused, the The idea of visiting Thalassa suddenly a new goal. As they left the lab, Dave clapped Michael on the back. Man, we need to explore more of this stuff. It's not just about studying. It's about understanding, experiencing. Definitely, Michael agreed, feeling a deeper connection not just to Cellari, but to her world as well. There's a whole universe out there to experience, and I'm just getting started. The group parted ways, each of them enriched by the experience and more curious than ever about the diverse cultures beyond Earth. Michael, in particular, felt a newfound appreciation for his friendship with Cellari and the doors it opened to a broader understanding of the universe. The VR experience had left a profound impact on Michael, weaving a sense of wonder and a deeper curiosity about Cellari's world into his daily thoughts. As the semester progressed, their friendship continued to grow, marked by frequent study sessions, occasional dinners, and long conversations that often strayed far from academic topics. One crisp autumn evening, Michael and Cellari were walking back from the library, a routine that had become a cherished part of their week. The campus was quiet, with most students huddled inside, away from the chill. You know, Michael, I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about visiting Thalassa. It's not just a pipe dream. There are exchange programs, you know? Cellari said, breaking the silence. Michael looked at her, a mix of excitement and hesitation in his eyes. Really? That would be incredible, but I don't know if I could ever actually do it. Why not? Cellari asked, genuinely curious. I guess it feels like a big step. Leaving Earth, even if it's just for a semester, Michael admitted, his voice trailing off. It is a big step, Cellari agreed. But sometimes those steps are the most rewarding. Their conversation was interrupted by Tom, who jogged up to them, breathless. Hey guys, are you heading to the student union? There's a guest lecturer tonight on interstellar diplomacy. Thought you'd be interested. Cellari's eyes lit up. That sounds fascinating. Are you going, Michael? Michael nodded. Wouldn't miss it for the world. Let's go. The lecture turned out to be more engaging than they had anticipated, with the speaker discussing the intricate dance of diplomacy between vastly different cultures and species. Afterward, the trio lingered in the hall, debriefing and discussing their thoughts. I never realized how complex negotiations could be when you have to consider not just political, but biological and cultural differences, Tom remarked, clearly impressed. It's all about finding common ground, even when it seems impossible, Cellari added, her eyes meeting Michael's. There was a spark there that Michael hadn't noticed before. As they walked Cellari to her dorm, Michael felt a stirring of something new, a warmth that went beyond simple friendship. He glanced at Cellari, who seemed lost in thought. Cellari, Michael started, then stopped, unsure of his words. Yes? Cellari turned to him, her expression open, inviting. I just wanted to say, I really appreciate your friendship. Tonight was great, Michael managed, feeling slightly embarrassed by his hesitation. Cellari smiled softly. I appreciate yours too, Michael. I feel very comfortable with you. Their eyes locked, and for a moment, the world seemed to pause. Michael felt a pull, an urge to express something deeper, but he held back, uncertain of her reaction. Good night, Michael, Cellari finally said, breaking the gaze as she turned to enter her building. Good night, Cellari, Michael replied, watching her disappear inside. As he walked back to his own dorm, Tom clapped him on the shoulder. You've got it bad, huh? Michael sighed. Is it that obvious? Only to a blind man, Tom chuckled. She's great, though. You gonna do something about it? I don't know, man. I don't even know if she feels the same way, Michael confessed, his mind racing. Only one way to find out, Tom advised sagely. That night, as Michael lay in bed, he couldn't stop thinking about Cellari. He realized he had to find out how she felt, even if the possibility of rejection terrified him. It was a risk, but as Cellari had said, sometimes the biggest steps were the most rewarding. The thought lingered as he drifted into sleep, a plan beginning to form in his mind. Michael couldn't shake the thoughts of Cellari from his mind. Every interaction, every shared look, every moment seemed to tug at him more deeply. Finally, he decided to take the leap. He invited her to dinner at a quiet spot off campus, a place where they could talk without the usual bustle of student life. They met just as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in soft shades of pink and purple. Cellari looked radiant in the evening light, her iridescent skin catching the last rays of the sun. "This place is beautiful," she said, looking around as they sat at a small table by the window. "I thought you'd like it," Michael replied, feeling a mix of excitement and nerves. Their conversation flowed as it always did, touching on everything from class projects to funny cultural quirks. As they talked, Michael noticed how she looked at him with a warmth that he hadn't seen before. It gave him the courage to speak his mind. "Cellari, there's something I've been wanting to tell you," he began, his voice steady but his heart racing. She tilted her head slightly, listening intently. "What is it?" He took a deep breath. "These past few months have been, well, incredible. Getting to know you, learning about your world. It's been more than I ever expected. And I've realized that I care about you, more than just as a friend." Cellari's eyes widened slightly, a flush of violet spreading across her cheeks. She looked away briefly, then met his gaze again. "Michael, I feel the same way." Relief flooded through him, and they shared a smile, one that felt like the beginning of something deeper. As they finished their meal, they spoke more openly, sharing their hopes and their fears about what this new chapter might mean for them. On the walk back, the air between them was electric, charged with the promise of what lay ahead. They reached Michael's dorm, and he paused, glancing at her with a question in his eyes. "Would you like to come in?" he asked, his voice soft. Cellari nodded, a hint of nervousness but also excitement on her face. Inside, they stood in the dim glow of his room, neither of them speaking as the silence grew thicker. Finally, Michael reached out, taking her hand in his. Their first kiss was tentative, a gentle brush of lips that sent a thrill through both of them. She placed her hands on his shoulders, pulling him closer, and their kiss deepened, a tender exploration that was new and exhilarating. "You're so warm," she murmured, her breath against his cheek as they pulled apart slightly. Michael smiled, brushing a strand of hair back from her face. "And you're amazing," he replied, his voice barely a whisper. They kissed again, slower this time, savoring the feel of each other. His hands moved to her waist, pulling her close as they lost themselves in the moment. Cellari's skin shimmered with faint patterns, a bioluminescent response to her emotions, and Michael was mesmerized. Their movements became more instinctive, guided by the growing connection between them. Cellari's hands traced down his back, gentle yet confident, as they moved toward the bed. Michael felt his heart pounding, every sensation heightened as they lay beside each other, exploring each other's touch and presence. In that shared moment, everything else faded away. Class schedules, exams, the worlds they came from, all replaced by a single, overwhelming awareness of each other. They spent the night wrapped in each other's arms, exchanging whispers, kisses, and touches that spoke of a deep, mutual desire and understanding. As dawn began to break, casting a soft glow across the room, Cellari rested her head on Michael's chest, their fingers intertwined. "Accidentally, my alien classmate came to my room," she murmured, a teasing smile on her lips. "She shocked saw me without." Michael laughed softly, finishing her thought. Without a clue that this would happen, they lay there in comfortable silence, each feeling the quiet contentment that came from finding someone who truly understood them. It was a night neither of them would forget, a night that marked the beginning of something profound, a connection that bridged not just cultures but worlds. Michael and Cellari found themselves spending nearly every spare moment together after that night. Their friendship had transformed into something more, a quiet, undeniable bond. They shared meals, studied for exams, and took long walks around campus, often ending up at the little cafe where they'd started to make it a ritual. One evening, as they sipped warm drinks, Michael looked at Cellari, unable to hide a growing thought. "What do your friends back home think of all this? You know, of us?" he asked, curious and a bit anxious. Cellari smiled, leaning closer. "They'd be fascinated, honestly. Thalassans are encouraged to experience other cultures, though. I think my family would be surprised," she admitted with a playful sparkle in her eyes. "Surprised?" Michael asked, grinning. "What? Humans aren't impressive enough?" "It's not that," She laughed. They just probably never pictured this. But I don't think they'd be disappointed. They know I'm here to learn, to grow. Michael nodded, his face growing serious for a moment. Do you ever think about what happens after this semester? I mean, we're just getting started. Cellari reached across the table, her hand finding his. I've thought about it, yes. The exchange program I'm in allows for extended stays if both universities agree. I'd be willing to stay longer if that's something we both wanted. Michael's eyes lit up. The weight he hadn't realized he was carrying suddenly lifted. You'd really do that? Cellari nodded. Yes. But what about you? Would you want to visit Thalassa? Michael took a deep breath, surprised at how certain he felt. I'd like that. As long as I get a guide who knows her way around, he teased, squeezing her hand. They sat in silence for a moment, a shared understanding passing between them. The idea of traveling to her world didn't feel as daunting as it once had. He could picture it now, experiencing Thalassa, its vibrant underwater cities, its shimmering festivals. More than that, he could picture experiencing it all with Cellari. She broke the silence, her tone light. We'll have to start preparing you. Thalassa has a few quirks that might surprise you. Michael chuckled, leaning in. As long as you're there, I think I can handle it. Cellari smiled, her hand still in his. Then let's make it happen. As the semester drew to a close, Michael and Cellari found themselves on the brink of a new adventure. They had both applied to the interplanetary exchange program, and after several anxious days, the news arrived. Michael was accepted for a semester on Thalassa, and Cellari's stay on Earth was extended. The night before Michael was set to leave, they met in the quiet corner of the campus garden. The familiar setting felt like the perfect place to talk about the journey ahead. So, this is really happening, Michael said, his excitement tempered with a trace of nervousness. Tomorrow, I'll be traveling to Thalassa. I still can't believe it. Cellari squeezed his hand, her eyes reflecting a mix of pride and excitement. You'll do great, Michael. I'll be right there, helping you adjust to the water. She teased gently. Yeah, about that. He laughed, brushing a hand through his hair. I've only been in a pool, you know. No actual underwater cities or floating schools of bioluminescent fish. Cellari chuckled, leaning her head on his shoulder. We'll start slow. Besides, the Thalassans have technology to help newcomers adjust. You'll be fine, and I'll make sure of it. He took a deep breath, his gaze settling on her. It's not just the water I'm worried about. I don't want to feel like an outsider there. Cellari's eyes softened. You won't be. I'll introduce you to everyone. You're not just some tourist. You're part of my world now. And Thalassans are welcoming, curious, like you. They'll love meeting you. Michael felt his worries ease, replaced by anticipation. And I'll get to experience the Festival of Lights in person, right? No more VR. Cellari's smile widened. Yes, the real thing is like nothing you've seen. The colors, the music, the energy in the water. You'll love it. They stayed there, watching the stars, neither of them needing to say much. The gravity of this moment felt as vast as the galaxy itself, and they let the silence fill with all the emotions words couldn't capture. When it was time to say goodnight, Michael took her hand, his voice soft. I'm ready for this, Cellari. For everything. She leaned in, pressing her forehead gently to his, their breathing in sync. So am I. As they parted, Michael walked back to his room with a feeling he couldn't quite name. The next day held a journey he could have never imagined when he first arrived at university, but now, with Cellari by his side, it felt right.